Chapter 3579. You go about your business. Antares was hooked on the conversation. He finally tasted the feeling Lin Moyu had back then, knowing how enjoyable it was to chat with an old fellow who had lived for countless years. Waterstop Tenzuin had lived for too long. His age was only slightly later than the Taiyang ancestral dragon, almost counting as the second batch of beings in this world. The beings of that era were few in number but rich in great Tao power. They often possessed many unique abilities. Like Waterstop Tenzuin, born with a heavenly formation, he was destined for the path of formations. The sect master of the Great Tao Array sect initially obtained the origin formation. If things had developed normally, the sect master of the Great Tao Array sect indeed had a chance to become the Tao Lord of the formation Great Tao. Unfortunately, he coveted Waterstop Tenzuin's heavenly formation, resulting in damage to the origin formation, and his path to becoming a Tao Lord was almost cut off. These matters had been buried in Waterstop Tenzuin's heart for too long. Once he started talking about them, he became somewhat unstoppable. One story after another poured from Waterstop Tenzuin's mouth, letting Antares know about the development and evolution of this world. He learned that he had a chance to become the new ancestral dragon, and also knew that he had a chance to go even further. Now that both the Taiyang and Tai-Yin divine dragons were dead, the two great origins of Taiyang and Tai-Yin would surely nurture new beings again. The beings nurtured this time might not necessarily be divine dragons, they could be something else, but their core essence would be the Taiyang and Tai-Yin origins. If Antares could absorb and refine these two great origins, he might be able to take a step further and become the Yin-Yang divine dragon. At that time, he would combine the Yang dragon Great Tao and Yin dragon Great Tao, becoming the lord of both Taos. Then he could become an existence as powerful as the former Lord of Hell. Why was the Lord of Hell so powerful? Because he simultaneously mastered two great Taos. They were the Hell Great Tao and the Devouring Great Tao, which made him stronger than other Tao lords, almost the strongest being on the origin continent. Becoming the Tao Lord of two great Taos simultaneously was a very, very difficult thing. Since ancient times, only the Lord of Hell had achieved it. Unfortunately, his plan failed, and he ultimately lost to someone else, dying in the Great Tao struggle. After hearing these secrets, Antares secretly glanced at Lin Moyu. Lin Moyu was still studying the formation, seemingly oblivious to external matters. However, Antares knew that Lin Moyu could multitask. His conversation with Waterstop Tenzuin had probably all been heard. He also knew that Lin Moyu himself possessed the Yin-Yang origin. He couldn't help but think to himself,
if I can't refine the Taiyang and Tai-Yin origins of the origin continent, can I ask little Lin for help?
He thought about borrowing Lin Moyu's Yin-Yang origin, which might allow him to take that path as well. But at the same time, another question arose. Antares asked,
Senior, do you think little Lin might be the reincarnation of the Lord of Hell?
Waterstop Tenzuin shook his head.
I don't think so. Little Lin's path is different from the Lord of Hell's. His goal is even more distant than the Lord of Hell's. You should know about that person. That person once descended, just for little Lin. The Lord of Hell couldn't attract that person to descend.
Antares murmured.
That's true. Little Lin's goal is far beyond this.
The two drank and chatted for a long time, until Lin Moyu finally finished studying the heaven-sealing Tao-severing formation. The heaven-sealing Tao-severing formation was almost the ultimate in sealing formations. The formation was so complex that he couldn't set it up with his current abilities. But if it was just opening a passage to enter it, that was doable. After studying the formation, Lin Moyu felt somewhat embarrassed. He had previously thought about controlling this formation, but now it seemed rather unrealistic. While studying the formation, Lin Moyu was indeed also pondering the conversation between Waterstop Tenzuin and Antares. He multitasked, taking in all of their conversation. He became increasingly clear about the matters of the Outer Sky Great Tao. The Outer Sky Great Tao was similarly a world of constant struggle and competition for supremacy. However, he could understand. Only in this way would the world have vitality and be able to progress upward. If there was eternal peace without survival pressure, it would be difficult to advance. Just like the current great world, under his elimination of the myriad races and the human emperor's management. Although the great world was developing reasonably well, its power was far less than before. Lin Moyu had discussed with the human emperor and was considering changing this situation, but they hadn't figured out how yet. The great world had been peaceful for too long and had become a greenhouse. It needed some impetus to move forward. He slowly opened his eyes and looked at the dragon and turtle reeking of alcohol.
Have you drunk enough?
Antares said.
Not yet, not yet. You go about your business. Don't mind us.
This guy really didn't want to move. After all, there could only be one guide, and that must be Lin Moyu. He shouldn't interfere. Waterstop, Tenzuin said.
Go on. This old man will watch here. No one can come in. Guide this change, ascend in broad daylight, and welcome a new world.
Although he spoke so righteously, Lin Moyu knew better. He definitely just wanted to see the Great Tao Array sect in trouble. The Great Tao Array sect was still completely unaware that difficulties were approaching. Lin Moyu no longer expected Antares to take the bullet for him. He returned to the vortex himself and flew downward. Large amounts of lightning struck his body. Lin Moyu's body roared with blood essence. Golden flame streams enveloped his entire body, blocking all attacks. With his defense, even a 9th-level Tao Venerable couldn't hurt him at all. Lin Moyu walked and stopped, continuously using divine runes to weaken the formation's power. In the process of weakening the formation, he became more familiar with this heaven-sealing Tao-severing formation. For Lin Moyu, it was also quite a good learning experience. He went deeper and deeper, passing the bottom of the boundary sea, arriving at the bottom of the Great Vortex. The bottom of the Great Vortex was indeed connected to this heaven-sealing Tao-severing formation. This formation used the sunken 5 continents as its foundation, with unprecedented power. Whoever tried to destroy this formation set up by heaven's mandate would suffer heaven's punishment. Lin Moyu sensed the aura of the King of the Boundary Sea here, clearly indicating that the King of the Boundary Sea had been here. His purpose for coming here was simple: to prevent the leakage of outer god auras. Many boundary sea creatures nearby had already been polluted. As the guardian of this formation, the King of the Boundary Sea naturally wouldn't sit idly by. But sometimes, the power that broke out was so enormous that even the King of the Boundary Sea's heart would be injured. The last time Lin Moyu came to rescue Old Whale, he had witnessed it. At that time, the King of the Boundary Sea had suffered some minor injuries. The injury wasn't severe, but in this world, how many people could injure the King of the Boundary Sea? He was injured here by the leaked power of the outer gods. At that time, the King of the Boundary Sea probably wanted to repair the heaven-sealing Tao-severing formation, but found that he didn't have that ability, and was even tricked by the outer gods. Actually, there was nothing wrong with the heaven-sealing Tao-severing formation. Even if power occasionally leaked, it was basically Waterstop Tenzuin's mischief. Waterstop Tenzuin was increasing the stakes, making sure the Great Tao Array sect would pay dearly. Lin Moyu looked at the connection point of the formation, drew several divine runes and merged them in. A doorway appeared. Lin Moyu took a step forward, entering the doorway. Chapter 3580. The seal must be resolved. The moment Lin Moyu stepped into the formation, Waterstop Tenzuin took a big gulp of wine and exclaimed,
He's gone in.
Antares was confused.
Isn't that normal?
Waterstop Tenzuin burped, exhaling countless alcohol fumes.
It's normal, but also not normal.
Before Antares could ask, he had already started explaining.
His attainment in formations is unmatched. For anyone else to decipher this formation in such a short time would be nothing short of a fantasy.
Antares said,
Is he even stronger than you were before?
Waterstop Tenzuin was silent for a few seconds, then casually said,
Stronger.
Hiss. Antares drew in a sharp breath.
But you were born with the heavenly formation. That's the holy body of formations. No matter how strong little Lin's formation talent is, it shouldn't be to this extent, right?
Waterstop Tenzuin chuckled.
Never mind anything else. Just look at how many years he's been cultivating, and how old he is now. Have you ever seen a 7th level Dao venerable at just over 3,000 years old? Although this old man was born with the heavenly formation and called the holy body of formations, it still took me over 5,000 years just to cultivate formations to reach the great Dao realm. And that was in that era. You know how different the eras before and after the origin catastrophe are.
Antares fell completely silent. Having been around Lin Moyu for so long, he had almost forgotten Lin Moyu's age. Now that Waterstop Tenzuin brought it up, he suddenly realized that Lin Moyu had only lived for just over 3,000 years. It was already incredible to reach such a level of cultivation in just over 3,000 years, let alone surpassing those formation masters who had cultivated for millions of years in terms of formation attainment. This could no longer be described as genius. Antares racked his brains but couldn't think of an appropriate word to describe it. Waterstop Tenzuin said,
Perhaps this is what they call a person of destiny. Anyway, I don't think he's the reincarnation of the Lord of Hell. The Lord of Hell wasn't as abnormal as him.
Antares' eyes lit up.
That's right, abnormal. This guy is just abnormal.
When Lin Moyu entered the heaven-sealing Dao-severing formation, the king of the Boundary Sea, who was with the third ancestor, suddenly shuddered.
Someone has gone in.
The Beast Emperor asked curiously.
What's gone in? Gone in where?
The third ancestor seemed to realize something.
You mean someone has entered the bottom of the Boundary Sea?
The king of the Boundary Sea nodded.
Yes, someone has entered the bottom of the Boundary Sea.
The Beast Emperor asked.
Do you know who it is?
The king of the Boundary Sea shook his head.
I don't know. They entered through the central vortex. They broke through the formation of the central vortex.
The Beast Emperor said in surprise.
No way, even we can't easily break through that formation. That formation spirit has turned into a vicious spirit, it's very fierce.
The king of the Boundary Sea said in a low voice.
My sensing can't be wrong. Although I haven't broken through, I have made some arrangements there.
The third ancestor said.
The key issue now is that someone has gone in. What do they want to do in there?
The king of the Boundary Sea still shook his head.
I'm not sure. I can only sense that someone has gone in, but I don't know what they're going to do.
The Beast Emperor said.
I don't know why, but I have a feeling of unease.
The third ancestor said in a low voice.
We should go take a look.
Inside the heaven-sealing Dao-severing formation, Lin Moyu sensed a different aura. The effects of the Thousand Stars Great Dao, Luck Great Dao, and Space Great Dao were all greatly reduced. This place was filled with the aura of outer gods, giving Lin Moyu the feeling that he had 1 foot in the realm of gods.
It seems the outer gods sealed here haven't been idle. They have expelled the power of the origin continent and transformed this place into their own world. No wonder the origin continent is having trouble recovering. With such a stubborn sticking plaster here, how could it recover? If the outer gods inside come out, it will be another great disaster for the entire origin continent.
The strong ones in the origin continent couldn't act recklessly on the origin continent, as that would cause severe damage to the origin continent. But these outer gods, as outsiders, could act recklessly. Even if the great Tao of the origin continent could suppress them, it would consume enormous power, which would be of no benefit to the origin continent. Lin Moyu could imagine that when the army of outer gods invaded the origin continent back then, the great Tao of the origin continent actively chose to sacrifice the sinking of the 5 continents, allowing the world-sealing Tao lord of that time to set up the heaven-sealing Tao-severing formation, sealing these outer gods in one fell swoop. From then on, the origin catastrophe ended, and the origin continent entered a period of dormancy. This decision back then resulted in the perishing of billions of lives on the 5 continents. The price was too great. Only after entering here could one understand all this. From this independent heavenly realm, Lin Moyu could still sense the tragic scenes brought about by the perishing of countless lives. All the tragedy had also transformed into the power of the origin continent, helping the world-sealing Tao Lord complete the formation.
It seems my guess wasn't wrong. To let the origin continent recover, this seal must be resolved. Only when the problem of the seal is resolved can the great changes in heaven and earth occur, and the origin continent recover. And the one who resolves the seal will be the guide of the great changes, able to gain the greatest benefits.
Only the great Tao of the origin continent could sink the 5 continents. This is the will of heaven. Following the will of heaven will bring rewards from the great Tao. Lin Moyu had a vague feeling that if he truly resolved the problem of the seal, removing the last stubborn sticking plaster from the origin continent, then he would receive massive rewards, enough to allow him to enter the great Tao realm in one go.
If that's the case, then let's begin.
Muttering to himself, he looked towards the distance. Not far away, a divine pet had already discovered Lin Moyu. Originally wandering aimlessly with a dull gaze, the moment it saw Lin Moyu, its gaze instantly became sharp, filled with killing intent. A strong feeling of disgust also rose in Lin Moyu's heart, and a voice kept ringing in his mind. Kill it! Kill it! The voice from the great Tao echoed back and forth in his mind. The next second, this divine pet pounced over frantically, its body rapidly enlarging, transforming into a monster covered in black armor, its shape somewhat resembling a hunting dog. Lin Moyu's heart moved, and the undead army attacked. 1,000 skeleton god generals appeared, forming a battle formation to block it. This divine pet was only at the 8th level of Tao Venerable Realm, not particularly strong. In terms of combat power, it was about the same as the skeleton god generals. But it had powerful defense. Other beings at the same 8th level of Tao Venerable Realm couldn't hurt it at all. Lin Moyu knew this point, and this deployment of skeleton god generals was just an attempt. 1,000 skeleton god generals slashed out sharp sword chi, accurately hitting the divine pet. The divine pet's charge was instantly interrupted, being pushed back continuously by the sword chi. But the divine pet wasn't injured. The sword chi couldn't even leave a mark on it. This situation was completely within Lin Moyu's expectations. Attacks from the same realm indeed couldn't do anything to outer gods. Not to mention the same realm, even one realm higher, the 9th level of Tao Venerable Realm, would be helpless against this divine pet. Lin Moyu willed it, and dense gray chi suddenly burst out from the skeleton god generals. The sword light was no longer pure white, but wrapped in a layer of gray chi. Carrying the power of death, each strike from the skeleton god generals would contain the power of death from the undeath great Tao. Lin Moyu's undeath great Tao was already at the 9th level of Tao Venerable Realm. Although the power would be somewhat weakened after being carried, it was enough to make the skeleton god generals much stronger. Most importantly, the corrosive property of the power of death might be able to break through the divine pet's defense.